My name is Garrett Anderson, 28 years old, and I once believed family meant unconditional support. When my grandfather passed away, he left me a trust fund meant for education and building my future. I never imagined my own parents would drain it to fuel my sister Sophia's Instagram lifestyle. The betrayal cut deep, but they assumed I would stay quiet like always. Before I tell you how I discovered my family's betrayal, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button because what happened next changed my understanding of family forever. I grew up in Lexington, a suburban town just outside Boston. Our neighborhood was filled with colonial-style homes, well-maintained lawns, and families who valued education and hard work. My childhood wasn't extravagant, but we were comfortable. My father, Robert, worked as a marketing executive for a regional firm, bringing home a decent salary. My mother, Linda, taught third grade at the local elementary school, passionate about education, but always reminding us about living within our means. From my earliest memories, our family dynamic had a clear pattern. My younger sister, Sophia, was the star, the one whose achievements were celebrated with enthusiasm, while mine received polite acknowledgement. When I brought home straight, as my parents would nod approvingly. When Sophia brought home B's and C's with 1A, they'd take us out for ice cream to celebrate her academic breakthrough. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my mother would explain whenever I expressed frustration. "You're naturally gifted, Garrett. Sophia has to work harder." This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Sophia needed new dance shoes, special tutoring summer camps for enrichment. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs starting at 16 to pay for my own extracurricular activities. It wasn't that we were poor, it was simply that family resources seemed perpetually directed toward Sophia's needs and wants. The one person who saw me differently was my grandfather, Richard, a self-made businessman who built a successful construction supply company from nothing. He recognized something in me that my parents seemed to overlook. While my parents attended Sophia's dance recitals, Grandpa Richard would come to my debate tournaments and science fairs. "You've got the mind for business, Garrett," he'd tell me, as we worked on his vintage Mustang in his garage. "Not just the smarts, but the patience. That's rarer than people think." Every Sunday I'd bike to his house where we'd spend hours talking about everything from history to economics. He taught me about investing, saving, and the value of delayed gratification. These lessons became the foundation of my financial philosophy even as a teenager. "Most people want the shiny thing right now," he explained, once holding up a socket wrench that gleamed in the garage light. "But the real wealth comes from knowing which tools to invest in, the ones that build more value over time." When I turned 16, he helped me open my first investment account with $200 I'd saved from mowing lawns. We tracked those investments together, celebrating small gains and analyzing losses. During my senior year of high school, Grandpa Richard was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim from the start. I spent every moment I could at his bedside during those final months. One afternoon when we were alone, he gripped my hand with surprising strength. "I've watched how your parents favor Sophia," he said, his voice weaker, but his eyes sharp as ever. "It's not fair to you, and I worry about what will happen when I'm gone." I tried to brush it off, uncomfortable with his directness, but he wouldn't let me. "Listen to me, Garrett. I've made arrangements. You're going to need education and a start in life. I've set up a trust for you. It's not to be touched except for your schooling and eventually a home. Your parents will be trustees until you're 30, but the money is for you." 2 weeks later, he was gone. At the reading of the will, I learned the details. Grandpa Richard had left me a trust fund of $750,000. My parents seemed surprised by the amount, exchanging glances I couldn't quite interpret at the time. The attorney explained the terms. The money was specifically for educational expenses and eventually a home purchase. Until I turned 30, my parents would serve as co-trustees, supposedly to provide guidance. "Your grandfather wanted to ensure your future," the attorney explained. "He was quite specific about his wishes." That night my parents were unusually attentive, asking about my college plans and career aspirations. Looking back, I should have recognized the calculating look in their eyes. But grief had blunted my perceptions, and I was touched by what I interpreted as a renewed interest in my life. "Your grandfather always did think you were special," my father said, a strange tone in his voice. "This is quite a responsibility." I nodded, still processing my loss. I just wish he was here to see what I do with it. My mother patted my hand. Well, we're here to help you make the right decisions. That's why we're the trustees, after all. In that moment, I felt grateful for their support, completely unaware that they were already formulating plans for my grandfather's generous gift that had nothing to do with my future at all. The spring of my senior year brought the news I'd been hoping for: an acceptance letter from MIT. My dream school had recognized my perfect GPA robotics team leadership and the software application I'd developed for local businesses. I'd worked relentlessly toward this goal, and now it was within reach. This is incredible, Garrett, my father said, examining the acceptance package. MIT is going to open so many doors for you. My mother nodded, though her enthusiasm seemed tempered. It's very expensive, though. Even with your grandfather's trust, we'll need to be careful. Their concern surprised me. But the trust should cover tuition, right? That's what Grandpa intended. Of course, my father agreed quickly. We just need to be strategic about how we use the funds. College is expensive, but life after college can be even more costly. I accepted their explanation, focused on preparations for my new adventure. The summer passed in a blur of orientation materials, dorm shopping, and saying goodbye to high school friends. Meanwhile, Sophia had just completed her sophomore year already, talking about wanting to switch schools to one with a better performing arts program. The day before I left for Cambridge, my father called me into his home office. Your sister has an incredible opportunity, he explained. There's an exclusive summer dance intensive in New York, but the application deadline passed while we were figuring out finances. I nodded, unsure why he was telling me this. The program director is willing to make an exception, but we need to pay the tuition immediately, $15,000. The amount shocked me. That's a lot for a summer program. It's an investment in her future, he countered. The thing is, we're a bit cash-strapped with your college expenses coming up. We were thinking we could borrow a small amount from your trust, just temporarily. The request made me uncomfortable. Isn't that against the terms? Grandpa was pretty clear it was for my education. We're the trustees, Garrett. We have some discretion in how the funds are managed. This is family helping family. Your sister would do the same for you. Though doubts nagged at me, I reluctantly agreed. Just this once, and it gets paid back right. Of course, my father assured me. By Christmas, guaranteed. That fall, I threw myself into MIT's challenging curriculum. The campus buzzed with innovation, and I found myself surrounded by peers who shared my passion for technology and problem-solving. For the first time, my academic enthusiasm was the norm, not something that made me the odd one out. I joined the robotics lab and began building connections that would shape my professional future. Midway through my first semester, my mother called. Sophia got the lead in her school production, but she needs special coaching to really shine. Just $3,000 this time from the trust. We'll pay it back with the other loan. Again, I agreed, though, with growing reservations. By spring semester, another call came, this time about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Sophia to participate in a music video casting that required new headshots, wardrobe, and coaching. Another $5,000. The pattern continued throughout my college years. Each request came with promises of repayment that never materialized. Each time the justifications grew thinner while the amounts grew larger. Junior year, I received a prestigious internship offer from a Seattle tech firm. When I called home with the news, my parents' response was tepid. That's nice, honey, but did you consider looking for something closer to home? Sophia's preparing for her college applications, and she could use your help with the essays. The internship in Seattle proved transformative. Away from the constant financial pressure of my family, I thrived in the innovative environment. My supervisors praised my work ethic and technical skills, ultimately offering me a return internship with the possibility of full-time employment after graduation. When I returned for my senior year, I noticed a change in my parents' communication. They called less frequently, except when they needed something. During winter break, I was shocked to find Sophia driving a new car. Early graduation present, my father explained dismissively when I questioned it. She needed reliable transportation for auditions. Meanwhile, I was still driving the 10-year-old Honda I'd purchased with my own savings. The disparity was becoming impossible to ignore. By graduation, my relationship with my parents had cooled considerably. They attended the ceremony, of course, taking plenty of photos to share with relatives and friends. But there was an undercurrent of tension neither of us acknowledged. As expected, the Seattle company offered me a full-time position with an impressive starting salary. The opportunity would take me 3,000 miles from home, a distance that suddenly felt necessary for my well-being. "You're moving so far away," my mother lamented when I shared the news. "What about staying closer to home? There must be tech companies in Boston." "This is a perfect fit for my career goals," I explained firmly. "And honestly, I think some distance might be good for all of us right now." My father frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I chose my words carefully. "I think we all need some space to establish our adult relationships. Sophia's starting college. I'm starting my career. It's a natural transition." What I didn't say was that I needed distance from their constant financial demands and the blatant favoritism that had only intensified over time. Moving to Seattle represented not just a career opportunity, but a chance to establish boundaries I'd been unable to create while in close proximity to my family. The day I left for Seattle, my parents hugged me at the airport, my mother teary-eyed. "Don't forget where you come from," my father said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Family is everything." As my plane took off, I couldn't help wondering if their conception of family was the same as mine, or if to them I was simply a resource to be tapped whenever Sophia needed something I had. Seattle embraced me with its evergreen landscape and thriving tech scene. I rented a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, close enough to walk to work at Horizon Technologies. The company culture encouraged innovation, and I quickly found myself immersed in challenging projects that stretched my abilities. My team lead Marcus became both mentor and friend, helping me navigate the transition from academic excellence to professional success. "You've got solid instincts," he told me after I debugged a particularly troublesome section of code. "Most new grads want to show off complicated solutions. You look for elegance and efficiency." Those first months I established a simple but comfortable life. I furnished my apartment with second-hand finds, started building an emergency fund, and explored my new city on weekends. For the first time, I controlled my own finances completely, with no one questioning my choices or asking for loans. Contact with my family dwindled to monthly phone calls and occasional text messages. Each conversation followed a predictable pattern: brief inquiries about my job, updates about Sophia's activities, and eventually a financial request. "Sophia's been invited to this exclusive industry workshop," my mother explained during one call. "It could really launch her career, but the fee is quite steep. Just $7,000 this time." "Mom, we've been through this," I replied, frustration mounting. "The trust is for my education and future. Grandpa was clear about that." "We're still the trustees," my father interjected, apparently on speakerphone. "And we're making an executive decision that this is a worthwhile investment. Sophia has real talent, Garrett. This could be her big break." The guilt trips intensified whenever I pushed back. "I guess Seattle has changed you," my mother would say. "You used to care about your sister's happiness." During my first Thanksgiving visit home, I was struck by the changes in our family home. New furniture adorned the living room, and my mother wore designer clothes I hadn't seen before. Meanwhile, Sophia constantly documented everything on her growing social media accounts, posing with new purchases and tagging luxury brands. "How's the influencer life treating you?" I asked her, as she took selfies with her dessert. "It's not just influencing," she corrected, not looking up from her phone. "I'm building a personal brand. Mom and Dad understand the investment required." Unlike some people, the pointed comment wasn't subtle. That night I checked Sophia's Instagram account. With 30,000 followers, she wasn't exactly viral, but she projected an aspirational lifestyle far beyond what a college student should afford. Designer clothes, weekend trips to New York, expensive restaurants, all meticulously documented with professional quality photos. Back in Seattle, I received a performance review that exceeded expectations, resulting in my first substantial bonus. Suddenly, the certification program Marcus had been encouraging me to pursue seemed within reach. The specialized cloud architecture training would position me for promotion to senior developer, a significant career advancement. "The company will cover part of it," Marcus explained, "but it's a $12,000 program, worth every penny for your career trajectory." I decided to finally use my trust fund for its intended purpose. The next morning I called the bank where my grandfather had established the account, expecting a straightforward process. "I'd like to arrange access to funds from my trust for a professional certification program," I explained to the representative. "My name is Garrett Anderson." "Let me pull up your account," she replied. After a moment of keyboard clicking, she continued, "Mr. Anderson, are you aware of your current balance?" "It should be around $750,000, minus college expenses," I answered. "So maybe $550,000. Her pause stretched uncomfortably. "Mr. Anderson, your current balance is $123,000. The number hit me like physical blow. "That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "I'm looking at the transaction history," she continued. "There have been numerous withdrawals over the past 7 years, all authorized by the trustees." My hands trembled as I requested a complete statement. "Can you email me the full transaction history?" "Of course." "Is the email address on file still current?" An hour later, the statement arrived. Pages of withdrawals, some small, many substantial, all coinciding with Sophia's opportunities and lifestyle upgrades. My parents had systematically drained over $400,000 from my trust, all while Sophia built her social media presence and personal brand. I called my parents, immediately rage-building with each ring. "Garrett, what a nice surprise," my mother answered cheerfully. "I just spoke to the bank," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "about my trust fund." The brief silence confirmed my suspicions before she even spoke. "Oh, is everything all right?" "No, everything is not all right. You've taken over $400,000, Mom. That money was for my education and future." "Now, Garrett," my father's voice cut in, apparently on speakerphone again. "As trustees, we've been managing those funds for the family's benefit." "It wasn't meant for the family," I argued. "Grandpa left it specifically for me." "Family helps family," he countered smoothly. "Sophia needed those opportunities to build her career. You're doing fine with your tech job. She needed the support more than you did. Her career posting luxury lifestyle photos on Instagram. That's what my education fund went to." My mother's voice turned defensive. "She has almost 50,000 followers now. The brand partnerships are starting to come in. This is a real career path in today's world." The conversation devolved from there, with my parents dismissing my concerns as selfish and short-sighted. According to them, Sophia's social media presence was an investment that would eventually benefit the whole family. My grandfather's intentions were recast as narrow-minded and outdated. "Times have changed," my father concluded. "Richard wouldn't have understood the opportunities in today's digital landscape." I hung up feeling hollow and betrayed. The weekend passed in a fog as I processed the magnitude of what had happened, not just the money but the years of manipulation and gaslighting that accompanied it. Every guilt trip, every dismissal of my achievements, every comparison to Sophia's needs took on new, sinister meaning. Monday morning, I was still distracted at work when my phone rang with an unknown local number. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Is this Garrett Anderson?" a professional female voice inquired. "Yes, this is Garrett. This is Margaret Reynolds, Trust Department Manager at First National Bank. I'm calling about an urgent matter regarding your trust account. Do you have a few minutes to discuss this privately?" That call would change everything. "Of course," I replied, stepping away from my desk and finding an empty conference room. "What's this regarding?" "Mr. Anderson, our compliance department flagged some unusual activity in your trust account during a routine audit," Mrs. Reynolds explained. "I've been reviewing the transaction history, and I have some concerns I'd like to discuss with you." My stomach tightened. I actually just discovered some discrepancies myself. The account balance is much lower than it should be. "Yes," she confirmed. "There have been numerous withdrawals over the past 7 years that don't appear to align with the stated purpose of the trust. Are you familiar with the terms your grandfather established?" My understanding was that the money was specifically for my education and eventually purchasing a home, I explained. But when I checked recently, I found that over $400,000 has been withdrawn. "That aligns with our findings," Mrs. Reynolds said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "Mr. Anderson, Would it be possible for you to come to the bank to discuss this in person? This is a sensitive matter that would be better addressed face to face. The next morning I took a personal day and arrived at the downtown bank branch where I was escorted to Mrs. Reynolds' office. She was a professional-looking woman in her mid-60s with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her office was immaculate with framed credentials on the wall and family photos on her desk. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Anderson," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I've prepared a complete transaction history for your review." She handed me a thick folder containing printed statements dating back to when the trust was first established. Each page told the story of systematic withdrawals beginning with smaller amounts during my freshman year of college and gradually increasing in both frequency and size. As you can see, Mrs. Reynolds continued, there were 78 separate withdrawals over the past 7 years. The pattern is concerning from a fiduciary responsibility standpoint. I flipped through the pages, noting dates that coincided with Sophia's dance intensives, her car purchase, the apartment renovation my parents had undertaken last year. Each withdrawal represented another betrayal, another moment when my future was sacrificed for Sophia's present. I confronted my parents about this, I told her. They claimed that as trustees they had the right to determine how the money was used. They said they were making executive decisions for the family's benefit. Mrs. Reynolds removed her glasses, her expression grave. "That's not accurate, Mr. Anderson. Your grandfather was very specific about the purpose of this trust. Education and housing for you exclusively. The trustees have a legal obligation to honor those terms." She pulled out another document, this one bearing my grandfather's signature. "This is the original trust agreement. I'd like you to review Section 7 regarding appropriate disbursements." I read the highlighted text. "All disbursements from this trust shall be exclusively for the educational expenses and future housing needs of my grandson, Garrett Richard Anderson. Any other use constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty." My parents knew this, I said, anger building again. "They deliberately misused the funds." "It appears so," Mrs. Reynolds agreed. "And there's more you should know. Your grandfather was a client of mine for many years. We worked together to establish this trust, and he shared his concerns with me." This caught me by surprise. "What concerns?" "He worried that your parents might not respect his wishes. He observed certain family dynamics that troubled him." Her diplomatic phrasing couldn't mask the implication. "You mean how they always favored my sister?" I translated flatly. She nodded once. "He never said it quite so directly, but yes. That's why he included a specific safeguard in the trust agreement. Something your parents apparently never noticed or perhaps didn't understand." My curiosity was piqued. "What kind of safeguard?" Mrs. Reynolds turned to another section of the document, Section 12 regarding misappropriation of funds. It states that any withdrawals not explicitly for education or housing would be classified as loans to the trustees accruing interest at 2% above prime rate compounded annually. The implications slowly dawned on me. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying that every dollar your parents withdrew for purposes other than your education or housing is legally considered a loan that must be repaid to the trust, with interest." She handed me another document. This spreadsheet shows the current amount, due $512,000. The figure was staggering, but they've spent that money on my sister's Instagram career, home renovations, vacations. "That's unfortunate but legally irrelevant," Mrs. Reynolds stated matter-of-factly. "As the bank administering this trust, we have a fiduciary responsibility to enforce its terms. Now that this has been flagged in our system, we're obligated to pursue recovery of misappropriated funds." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. "It means the bank will be sending formal notice to your parents, as trustees demanding repayment of all misused funds plus accrued interest within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in legal action." The reality of the situation settled over me. This wasn't just about me confronting my parents anymore. It had escalated to a legal matter with significant consequences. "Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Reynolds continued gently, "I understand this puts you in a difficult position with your family. However, I want you to understand that this process will proceed regardless of your personal feelings. The bank has a legal obligation to recover these funds. I nodded slowly. I understand. That said, she added, it might be better for everyone if you spoke to your parents before they receive the formal notice. It could give them time to make arrangements without the added pressure of immediate legal action. As I left the bank, my phone rang. It was my father. Garrett, he began without preamble, his voice tense. We just got a strange email from the bank about your trust fund. Something about an audit and potential improper disbursements. What's going on? They hadn't received the formal notice yet, just a preliminary communication. Still, my father's tone had none of the dismissive confidence from our previous conversation. For the first time, he sounded worried. I had a meeting with the trust manager today, I replied calmly. Turns out Grandpa was pretty thorough when he set up the trust. What does that mean? My father's voice rose slightly. It means the bank knows you've been misusing the funds, and there are consequences. Now listen here, he began, but I cut him off. No, you listen. For years, you and Mom have taken advantage of me and betrayed Grandpa's wishes. You've stolen my future to fund Sophia's Instagram fantasies, and now it's catching up to you. We are your parents, he hissed. After everything we've done for you. I'll be home this weekend, I interrupted. We can discuss this as a family then. I suggest you and Mom start figuring out how you're going to repay over $500,000. I ended the call before he could respond, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in my life, I held the power in our relationship. The truth was out, and my grandfather's foresight had provided the protection I never knew I needed. That night, my phone blew up with texts and calls from both parents, and even Sophia, alternating between anger appeals to family loyalty and attempts to make me feel guilty. I silenced my phone and slept better than I had in weeks, secure in the knowledge that justice was finally on my side. I flew into Boston on Friday evening, renting a car rather than asking my parents to pick me up. The familiar drive to Lexington gave me time to prepare mentally for the confrontation ahead. I'd spent the week consulting with a financial advisor Marcus had recommended, understanding my options and rights regarding the trust. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed both their cars were present, along with Sophia's luxury compact, too, the one purchased with my trust fund money. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my documents and approached the front door. My mother answered, her expression a carefully constructed mask of maternal concern. Garrett, we've been so worried about you. Come in, come in. The living room had been staged for what they clearly hoped would be a reconciliation. Coffee service laid out my father in his armchair, projecting calm authority. Sophia perched on the sofa, looking uncharacteristically subdued. The familiar setting felt surreal now that I understood the years of deception it had housed. Son, my father began gesturing to the empty seat. We need to clear the air about this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, I repeated, remaining standing. Is that what we're calling systematic theft now? My mother flinched. That's a horrible thing to say to your parents. We've only ever wanted what's best for this family. Let's be specific about who in the family you wanted the best for. I countered, opening my folder and placing the transaction history on the coffee table. 78 withdrawals over 7 years. $400,000 to fund Sophia's career and your lifestyle upgrades. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know the money was coming from your trust fund. They told me there was family money set aside for career development. There was family money set aside, I replied, looking directly at her. My money, left to me by Grandpa, specifically for my education and future. My father cleared his throat. Garrett, you need to understand that as parents we have to make decisions for the good of both our children. Your sister's career path required significant investment at a crucial time. Posting sponsored content on Instagram is not a career path that justifies stealing from my future, I shot back. But this isn't just about your moral failure anymore. This is about legal consequences. I removed the trust document from my folder, turning to the highlighted sections. Mrs. Reynolds at the bank walked me through the trust agreement, the one you signed as trustees, the one that explicitly states the money was only for my education and housing. My mother's composure began to crack. We're your parents. We have the right to make financial decisions. No, I interrupted firmly. You had a fiduciary responsibility to honor the terms of the trust. Instead, you systematically violated them for years. And here's what you apparently never bothered to read. I pointed to Section 12, the safeguard Grandpa built in. My father leaned forward, reading the clause with growing alarm. This can't be legally binding. We're the trustees. It's absolutely binding, I assured him. I've consulted with a financial advisor and an attorney. Every dollar you misappropriated is considered a loan that must be repaid to the trust, with interest. The color drained from my mother's face. $500,000. That's impossible. We don't have that kind of money. You should have thought of that before spending mine, I replied coldly. The bank is legally obligated to pursue recovery. They're preparing formal notice now, which will give you 30 days to repay in full. Or what my father challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. Or they initiate legal proceedings. The trust document gives them the right to place liens against your property, garnish wages, and pursue any assets you have. Plus, you'll be liable for all legal fees. The gravity of the situation finally seemed to penetrate their denial. My father's authoritative posture collapsed and my mother began to tear up. We can't possibly pay that amount, she whispered. We'd lose everything. You should have considered that possibility before treating my trust fund like your personal ATM, I replied, unmoved by her tears after years of manipulation. Sophia spoke up, her voice small. I'll sell my car. And the jewelry. The designer stuff. It won't be enough, but it's something. It was the first genuine response from any of them, and it momentarily softened my resolve. This isn't primarily your fault, Sophia. You didn't know where the money was coming from. But yes, returning what you can would help. My father suddenly shifted tactics. Garrett, be reasonable. We're family. Surely we can work something out without getting lawyers involved. Maybe a payment plan directly to you. The money doesn't get repaid to me, I clarified. It gets repaid to the trust, and the bank is already involved. This isn't a negotiation between us anymore. There must be something you can do, my mother pleaded. Call off the bank somehow. I shook my head. Even if I wanted to, I can't. The audit process is automatic. But I did get Mrs. Reynolds to agree to one concession. I pulled out another document. If you sign this acknowledgement of debt and agreement to repay, the bank will accept structured payments over 5 years instead of demanding the full amount in 30 days. My father snatched the document, scanning it frantically. This would require us to remortgage the house. We'd have to liquidate our retirement accounts. Yes, I agreed simply. Those are the consequences of your actions. After everything we've done for you, my mother began attempting one last guilt trip. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. You favored Sophia my entire life. You dismissed my achievements. You stole the one thing my grandfather left specifically to secure my future. So please tell me what I should be grateful for. The room fell silent. My father stared at the repayment agreement, my mother dabbed at her tears, and Sophia examined her manicure, likely calculating its resale value. You have a choice, I continued. Sign the agreement and work with the bank on a structured repayment, or face legal proceedings that will be public expensive, and likely end with the same financial outcome, just with added humiliation and legal fees. My father's shoulders sagged in defeat. We'll sign it. As I watched them initial each page of the agreement, I felt no triumph, only a sad vindication. My grandfather had foreseen this possibility and protected me from beyond the grave. His safeguard had worked exactly as intended, forcing accountability on those who had betrayed his trust and mine. I'll deliver this to Mrs. Reynolds on Monday, I said, gathering the signed documents. She'll contact you to arrange the first payment and collateral requirements. As I turned to leave, Sophia followed me to the door. I really didn't know, she said quietly, about the trust fund. I mean, I knew they were spending a lot on me, but I don't know what I thought. I studied my sister's face, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time. The money was never the main issue, Sophia. It was the betrayal, the systematic favoritism, the way they turned what should have been a normal sibling relationship into a competition I wasn't even allowed to know I was participating in. She nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And I'm going to help them pay it back. All of it. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. The Monday after my confrontation with my family, I delivered the signed repayment agreement to Mrs. Reynolds. She reviewed the document, carefully nodding with satisfaction. "This is a good first step, Mr. Anderson. Our recovery department will contact your parents to establish the payment schedule and collateral requirements." "What happens now?" I asked. "The bank will place a lien on your parents' home as security for the debt. They'll be required to make monthly payments of approximately $8,000 for the next 5 years. Any default would trigger accelerated collection procedures." The amount seemed staggering, but I reminded myself that this was the consequence of years of systematic theft, and the money goes back into the trust. "Yes, to be used according to your grandfather's original intentions. Education and housing for you exclusively." Over the next few weeks, the full impact of the repayment agreement rippled through my family. My mother called to inform me they were putting the house on the market. "We can't afford the payments and the mortgage," she explained, her voice tight with resentment. "We'll be downsizing to a condo." I acknowledged the information without offering sympathy. Years of manipulation had hardened me against their attempts to evoke guilt. Sophia's Instagram presence underwent a dramatic transformation. Gone were the luxury goods and exotic vacation posts. Instead, she began selling her designer items online, documenting the process with surprising transparency. "Resetting my priorities," she captioned one post, showing a collection of expensive handbags being packaged for resale. Material things don't define success. 3 months after the confrontation, I received an unexpected email from Sophia requesting a video call. Curious, I agreed. Her face appeared on my screen, noticeably changed. The carefully contoured makeup was gone, replaced by a natural look I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. "Hey," she began awkwardly. "Thanks for talking to me." "Sure," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "What's up?" "I wanted you to know that I've moved out of Mom and Dad's new place. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm. Entry level, but it's a real job with benefits." The news surprised me. "What about your influencer career?" She laughed without humor. "Turns out when you can't afford to maintain the lifestyle, the sponsors disappear pretty quickly. But honestly, I'm relieved. It was exhausting pretending to be something I'm not." "That's mature of you," I acknowledged. "I also wanted to tell you that I've been making payments directly to the bank separate from what Mom and Dad are paying. It's not much yet, but I'm committed to helping fix this." Her words seemed genuine, a marked departure from the entitled sister I'd known. "I appreciate that, Sophia. Really." "There's something else," she continued, fidgeting nervously. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our childhood, the way Mom and Dad always favored me. I didn't see it then, or maybe I didn't want to see it. But looking back, it was so obvious and so unfair to you." This unexpected acknowledgement caught me off guard. "It wasn't your fault. You were a kid too." "Maybe not initially," she agreed. "But as I got older, I could have questioned it. Instead, I leaned into being the golden child because it benefited me." She paused, gathering courage. "I'm sorry, Garrett, for my part in all of it." Her apology felt like the first honest interaction we'd had in years. "Thank you for saying that." Our conversation shifted to more neutral topics. Her new job, my projects at work, but something fundamental had changed between us. The artificial hierarchy our parents had created was crumbling, allowing the possibility of a relationship built on mutual respect rather than competition. Meanwhile, my parents' response to the consequences took a different path. After the initial shock wore off, they retreated into a narrative of victimhood, casting me as the ungrateful son who had devastated their retirement plans. They sold the house, liquidated investments, and complained bitterly to extended family about my legal attack on them. The family gossip made its way back to me through my Aunt Carolyn, my mother's sister. "Your mother is telling everyone you sued them and forced them out of their home," she informed me during a rare phone call. "Is that true?" I explained the reality of the situation: the trust, the misappropriated funds, the bank's legal obligation to recover the money. I didn't sue them. The bank enforced the terms of a trust they violated. Aunt Carolyn sighed heavily. "That sounds more plausible. Your parents always did have a selective relationship with the truth, especially when it came to money and Sophia." Her validation of my experience was unexpectedly healing. You noticed it too. Everyone noticed Garrett. We just didn't know how to intervene. Your grandfather was the only one who ever confronted them directly about the favoritism. I'm not surprised he built in protections for you. 6 months after the repayment agreement, I received a formal letter from my parents. No greeting, just a business-like notification. We have established automatic payments to satisfy the bank's requirements. We ask that you respect our need for space as we adjust to these circumstances. Communication should be limited to essential matters only. The coldness of the message stung despite everything. These were my parents, the people who should have protected and nurtured me. Instead, they had exploited me and now resented being held accountable. I showed the letter to my therapist, whom I'd started seeing to process the family betrayal. They're still not acknowledging the actual wrong she observed. They're framing this as an inconvenience imposed on them, not a consequence of their actions. Should I respond, I asked. What do you want from a relationship with them at this point? The question made me pause. Honesty, acknowledgement, some genuine remorse. Then I would wait for those things before investing more emotional energy, she advised. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. I took her advice, focusing instead on rebuilding my relationship with Sophia, who continued to demonstrate genuine change. She followed through on her commitment to contribute to the repayment, taking on a second job as a weekend barista to increase her contributions. We began a tentative tradition of monthly video calls, carefully navigating our new dynamic. The trust fund, meanwhile, was slowly being restored. Each payment from my parents and Sophia rebuilt what had been stolen, securing the future my grandfather had intended for me. The bank statements that had once been sources of shock and betrayal now represented healing and restoration, a tangible record of accountability in action. A year after the confrontation, my career at Horizon Technologies had advanced significantly. The certification program I'd initially wanted to pursue was completed, paid for by my partially restored trust fund, exactly as my grandfather had intended. I was promoted to senior developer with a substantial salary increase, validating my focus on professional growth despite the family drama. With the promotion came an opportunity to consider my grandfather's second intention for the trust, a home purchase. Seattle's real estate market was challenging, but with my savings and the growing trust balance, I began exploring options in neighborhoods close to work. One sunny Saturday, my realtor showed me a modest craftsman-style house in Wallingford. The moment I walked through the door, I felt a sense of rightness, as if my grandfather would have approved of this solid, well-built home with good bones and potential for growth. This is it, I told her, standing in the bright kitchen, with its outdated but functional appliances. This is the one. The closing process took 2 months, during which my parents continued their automatic payments without personal communication. Sophia, however, called regularly, excited about my home purchase and her own growing independence. I got a promotion at work, she shared during one call. Assistant account manager. Still entry-level, but it's a step up. That's great, I replied sincerely. You're building something real. She nodded. It feels better than the Instagram life. More solid, I actually sleep better at night. The day I signed the final papers for my house, I felt my grandfather's presence strongly. This was exactly what he'd wanted for me. Education, completed career, established, and now a home of my own, built on a foundation of hard work and protected resources. I took a photo of the house keys in my hand and texted it to Sophia with the caption, "Grandpa's plan fulfilled." She responded immediately. "He would be so proud of you. I am too." That evening, sitting on the floor of my empty living room with takeout dinner, I received an unexpected call from Mrs. Reynolds at the bank. "Mr. Anderson, I wanted to personally let you know that your parents have made an offer to settle the remaining balance of their debt to the trust." This surprised me. They're still years away from full repayment. "Yes, but they've apparently decided to liquidate additional assets to clear the debt entirely. They've sold their vacation property in Maine and some investments. The bank has accepted their offer." The news left me conflicted. On one hand, the accelerated repayment meant my trust would be fully restored sooner. On the other hand, the sudden decision suggested they were cutting ties even more decisively, paying off their debt to be free of the connection to me. A week later, as I was unpacking boxes in my new home, my doorbell rang. Opening the door, I was shocked to find Sophia standing there, suitcase at her feet. "Surprised," she said tentatively. "I hope it's okay that I came. I have a job interview in Seattle tomorrow, and I thought maybe—" "You could stay here," I finished, stepping aside to let her in. "Of course." That evening, over pizza, in my half-furnished dining room, Sophia shared news that helped explain our parents' sudden debt settlement. "They're moving to Florida," she revealed. "Dad took early retirement. They sold almost everything, paid off the bank, and bought a small condo in a retirement community." Without telling me, I noted, unsurprised. "They're not handling any of this well," she admitted. "In their minds, they're the victims in this story. They talk about you forcing them into retirement, not about how they spent your money." "And you?" I asked. "Where do you stand now?" She considered the question carefully. "I think they were wrong. Completely wrong. Not just about the money, but about how they treated you your whole life, and how they encouraged me to see myself as somehow more deserving." She met my eyes directly. "I don't want to be that person anymore." Her honesty was refreshing after years of family dynamics built on denial and manipulation. "The job interview tomorrow," I ventured. "Is that real or an excuse to visit?" "It's real," she grinned. "Marketing coordinator position at a firm downtown. Lower salary than Boston, but Seattle has more opportunities in the long run." And she hesitated. "It would be nice to be closer to my brother. Start fresh, you know." 2 days later, Sophia called with the news that she'd been offered the job. A month after that, she moved to Seattle, renting a small apartment 20 minutes from my house. Our relationship continued to evolve, building on genuine connection rather than the artificial hierarchy our parents had created. My parents, true to form, sent a formal email informing me that they had satisfied their debt to the trust and considered our financial entanglements concluded. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a businesslike notification of completed transaction. I showed the email to my therapist, who had helped me process so much of the family trauma. "Are you disappointed?" she asked. "Not surprised," I corrected. "But yes, a little disappointed. There's still a part of me that hoped they might eventually recognize what they did." "Some people can't face their own actions," she observed. "It would require them to reconstruct their entire self-image." In the months that followed, I established a new normal. My house became a home, with each improvement and personal touch a small victory. My career continued to flourish, with responsibilities and compensation growing steadily. Sophia and I developed a genuine sibling relationship, supporting each other's growth without competition or resentment. The fully restored trust fund sat in its account, secure for its intended purposes. I occasionally checked the balance, not from anxiety anymore, but from a sense of connection to my grandfather's legacy. He had seen the dysfunction in our family clearly, and created a safeguard that ultimately forced accountability, even if my parents never fully acknowledged their wrongdoing. 1 year after moving into my house, I hosted a small housewarming gathering with friends from work and Sophia. As we enjoyed drinks on the back deck I'd recently completed, Marcus raised his glass. To Garrett, who built this life through hard work and integrity, and to his grandfather, who knew the value of both. Later, after the guests had departed, Sophia helped me clean up the kitchen. "Do you ever wonder if Mom and Dad will come around?" she asked, loading the dishwasher. "Acknowledge what happened. Try to make amends." I considered the question honestly. I used to hope for that. Now I think it's unlikely. They've constructed a narrative where they're the victims, and changing that would require them to face some uncomfortable truths about themselves. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "For what it's worth, I see the truth, and I'm trying to be better." "That's worth a lot," I assured her. "More than you know." The journey from betrayal to resolution had taught me painful but valuable lessons. I learned that sometimes family can be the source of deepest wounds, but also that it's possible to break cycles of dysfunction. I discovered the importance of boundaries and the courage to enforce them. Most importantly, I realized that true healing doesn't necessarily require others to acknowledge their wrongs. It requires us to acknowledge our own worth and right to be treated with respect. My grandfather's safeguard wasn't just financial, it was a final lesson in standing up for myself. By protecting my resources, he gave me the foundation to build a life based on integrity rather than manipulation. The money was ultimately restored, But the greater gift was the freedom that came from finally breaking the pattern of exploitation and standing firmly in my own truth. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about finding strength in challenging situations. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most important safeguards in life are the ones that protect our sense of self-worth. Stay strong out there.